Hey, this is Mr. Beliveau, and I am here to talk to you about your diagnostic essay. I wanted you to write about a personal belief that you hold, something that guides your life. And to do that, to give you some examples, I went to the thisibelieve.org website, not .com, .org, and I'm going to go over a couple of the essays that I think have a good structure, and I want you to listen to them. And then I'm going to go through them and I'm going to do the reading like a writer exercise where I look at these not just for the content, not just for what they say, but as a writer, I'm going to be looking at how they say it. So I think to begin with, it's a good idea to just listen to the essay so you can hear the whole thing all the way through. If you're reading a chapter of a book, you might go chapter by chapter. If it's got subsections, you might go subsection by subsection. But you definitely want to get an idea of the whole piece of it before you go back and start pulling it apart. So let's listen to what Dr. Fauci has to say.
Dr. Fauci's career had humble beginnings. He grew up in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and delivered prescriptions by bicycle for his father's drugstore. Now, and for over 20 years, even as he guides research and U.S. policy on AIDS and bioterrorism, he continues to see patients. He considers himself a driven man. His belief is in both the fuel and the purpose of the drive. Here is Dr. Anthony Fauci with his essay, For This I Believe.
I believe I have a personal responsibility to make a positive impact on society. I've tried to accomplish this goal by choosing a life of public service. I am a physician and a scientist, confronting the challenge of infectious diseases. I consider my job a gift. It allows me to try and help alleviate the suffering of humankind. I have three guiding principles that anchor my life, and I think about them every day. First, I have an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Knowledge goes hand in hand with truth, something I learned with a bit of tough love from my Jesuit education, first at Regis High School in New York City, and then at Holy Cross College in Worcester, Massachusetts. I consider myself a perpetual student. You seek and learn every day, from an experiment in the lab, from reading a scientific journal, from taking care of a patient. Because of this, I rarely get bored. Second, I believe in striving for excellence. I sweat the big and the small stuff. I do not apologize for this. One of the byproducts of being a perfectionist and constantly trying to improve myself are sobering feelings of low-grade anxiety and a nagging sense of inadequacy. But this is not anxiety without a purpose. No, this anxiety keeps me humble. It creates a healthy tension that serves as the catalyst that drives me to fulfill my limited potential. This has made me a better physician and scientist. Without this tension, I wouldn't be as focused. I have accepted that I will never know or understand as much as I want. This is what keeps the quest for knowledge exciting. And it is one of the reasons I would do my job even if I did not get paid to come to work every day. Third, I believe that as a physician, my goal is to serve humankind. I have spent all of my professional life in public service, most of it involved in research, care of patients, and public health policy concerning the HIV/AIDS epidemic. When I chose to concentrate on AIDS in the 1980s, many of my colleagues thought I was misguided to be focusing all of my attention on what was then considered just a gay man's disease. But I felt that this was my destiny and was perfectly matched to my training. I knew deep down that this was going to become a public health catastrophe. I am committed to confronting the enormity of this global public health catastrophe and its potential for even greater devastation. Failure to contain it cannot be an option. I believe that to be even marginally successful in working to contain this terrible disease, I must be guided by these principles. I must continually thirst for knowledge, accept nothing short of excellence, and know that the good of the global society is more important and larger than I am.
Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health with his essay, For This I Believe.
All right, let's take a look at how this is put together. He starts off with his thesis statement, which in this case is the statement of his belief. He starts off saying, I believe I have a personal responsibility to make a positive impact on society. Now that's a really big goal. Not to just have a positive impact on those around you, not just to have a positive impact on some people, but to have a positive impact on society. So this is something that drives him. The rest of the opening paragraph kind of completes that introduction to himself. I've tried to accomplish this goal by choosing a life of public service. And a little bit about who he is. I am a physician and a scientist confronting the challenge of infectious diseases. I consider my job a gift. It allows me to try and help alleviate the suffering of humankind. Okay, so we're starting off with his belief, then a little bit of background, just so you know a little bit about him. And then we get to a big one right here. This sentence right here. In fact, he chose to make this a paragraph all on its own. I would not suggest that for you. I'm really not sure that one sentence paragraphs are a good thing for you. So try to avoid that. Okay, but he has this statement, I have 3 guiding principles that anchor my life, and I think about them every day. That sets up his structure for the whole essay. You can see he's got right here, he's got first, right here, he's got second, and here he has third. So by putting these, given this structure, he's saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to break my belief, my big belief up here, into 3 guiding principles. And then he talks about each one. And then when it comes down here to his conclusion, he very quickly repeats what those are. I must continually thirst for knowledge, accept nothing short of excellence, and know that the good of the global society is more important and larger than I am. Okay, so let's get back to this one. I have 3 guiding principles that anchor my life. Okay, the first one. So after he states it, he then states what it is. Okay, first I have an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Well, why do you have that? As readers, we ask questions. Why? Why do you feel that way? He says, knowledge goes hand in hand with truth. Something I learned with a bit of tough love from my Jesuit education, first at Regis High School in New York City, and then at Holy Cross College in Worcester, Massachusetts. Okay, so again, we get a little bit of background about him. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of it, Jesuits are an order of Catholic priests, and they are known for 2 things, education and discipline, which he kind of hints at a little bit with that tough love line. So he learned discipline when he did this with his education. So I'm guessing that went together really strongly for him. And then he says, I consider myself a perpetual student. Okay, that also goes back to this unquenchable thirst of knowledge. And then he's got what I see as a mistake. He's got this word right here, you. I'll orange it out. I don't have a red one, so I'll orange it out. You is a second person pronoun. He's stopped talking here about himself, and he's addressing the reader. Why? I think that it would have been much better if instead of you, he had put the first person, I seek and learn every day. Now, in your essay, you will avoid completely 100% second person pronouns. You will avoid you, your, yours, yourself. Nothing with a you in it is going to be acceptable. So get that in your head right now. You're going to have to get rid of every second person pronoun that you put in your paper. But when we get past that, we get to some more examples that back up this I have an unquenchable thirst for knowledge idea. To seek and learn every day from an experiment in the lab, from reading a scientific journal, from taking care of a patient. Because of this, I rarely get bored. So there's, again, all of this builds to this idea, this first guiding principle of having an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. And then in his second paragraph, he says that he believes in striving for excellence. So that's his second guiding principle, striving for excellence. He says, I sweat the big and the small stuff, and I do not apologize for this. Don't sweat the small stuff is a fun kind of statement to say if you see somebody who's, getting really worked up over something that's not that important. But when you're trying to help the entire country cure an infectious disease, you probably want to take care of those little details and not just the big stuff. And that means he's kind of a perfectionist. And he says that. One of the byproducts of being a perfectionist, and that's not always positive, and constantly trying to prove myself are sobering feelings of low-grade anxiety and a nagging sense of inadequacy. So he is taking a look at himself here, and he's kind of saying that it's not all perfect. Having this belief isn't always easy. Living to this belief is not always easy. And it produces in him anxiety and feelings of inadequacy. He always feels like he could be doing better. In fact, he puts that right next to it. He kind of has that but. But is a signal that you're changing direction. Okay, so he's got this sense of inadequacy, but it's not inadequacy without purpose. It keeps him humble. It creates a tension that serves as a catalyst that drives him to fulfill his limited potential. So right here, we're getting right back on that idea. And talks about how this goal, this guiding principle, has helped to affect him. It's made him a better physician and scientist. The problems that this produced, the anxiety and the inadequacy, he looks for the silver lining in there and finds that in keeping him humble and keeping him focused. Then he says, I have accepted that I will never know or understand as much as I want. This is what keeps the quest for knowledge exciting, and it's one of the reasons I would do my job even if I did not get paid to come to work every day. So again, everything here is again going right back to this second idea. So this whole section, the one longer paragraph and the two shorter little paragraphs, all add up together to talk about his second guiding principle. And then again, one of these third short little paragraphs, he says, third, I believe that as a physician, it is my goal to serve humankind. Okay, so there again, that even goes back not just to this guiding principle thing, but also up to his main idea about having a positive impact on society. So with that, it gets to his goal is to serve all of humankind. And then he goes back and talks a little bit about his background, about how he was instrumental in the whole fight against HIV/AIDS, and that even though some people at the time didn't look at it as something important, he knew that it was going to be a big deal. He knew that it was going to be devastating and life altering and life destroying. And so he decided that's what he was going to focus his life on. So, right here, I am committed to confronting the enormity of this global public health catastrophe and its potential for even greater devastation. And that goes back to his whole idea of humankind and his whole idea of a responsibility for positive impact on society. And then in the last one, failure to contain it cannot be an option. I believe that to be even marginally successful in working to contain this terrible disease, I must be guided by these principles. And then he goes right back and reiterates what they were. Repeats one more time, I must continually thirst for knowledge, accept nothing short of excellence, and know that the good of the global society is more important and larger than I am. So when he's putting this together, he's got a structure. And when you put yours together, you're going to need to have a structure. Keep that in mind when you are putting your paper together. Now, this is not the only way you can structure a paper. Far from it. And in a minute, it's going to be less for you. There's going to be kind of a jump cut coming up here, and we're going to look at another essay from the This I Believe collection that I want to talk to you about. And that is going to be an essay by Robert A. Heinlein. Okay, Robert A. Heinlein is one of the most influential writers for me personally. I have read pretty much everything he's written, fiction and nonfiction. So it was really interesting for me personally when I found that one of my most influential authors had presented an essay for this program. And like before, I want to go ahead and take a listen to what he has to say for his essay before we get into it too much. Let me size that correctly. I should have taken care of that while I was in my jump cut over there. Okay, hold on. It's fighting me. Okay. Let's listen to what he has to say. And I'll try to, go up here and let you see it as we're going through it, because this is a little bit of a longer one, and I want you to have a chance to see it.
This, I believe. A lively interest in interplanetary travel, fiscal theory, chess, and figure skating combine in the personality of Robert A. Heinlein. The motion picture, Destination Moon, and innumerable scientific fiction stories, novels, and television shows are products of his fertile imagination. He also has some stimulating beliefs on the more mundane and immediate problems of existence. This is Robert Heinlein's creed.
I am not going to talk about religious beliefs, but about matters so obvious that it has gone out of style to mention them. I believe in my neighbors. I know their faults, and I know that their virtues far outweigh their faults. Take Father Michael down our road a piece. I'm not of his creed, but I know that goodness and charity and loving kindness shine in his daily actions. I believe in Father Mike. If I'm in trouble, I'll go to him. My next-door neighbor is a veterinary doctor. Doc will get out of bed after a hard day to help a stray cat. No fee, no prospect of a fee. I believe in Doc. I believe in my townspeople. You can knock on any door in our town, say, I'm hungry, and you will be fed. Our town is no exception. I found the same ready charity everywhere. For the one who says, the heck with you, I got mine, there are 100, 1,000, who will say, sure, pal, sit down. I know that, despite all warnings against hitchhikers, I can step to the highway, thumb for a ride, and in a few minutes a car or a truck will stop and someone will say, climb in, Mac. How far are you going? I believe in my fellow citizens. Our headlines are splashed with crime, yet for every criminal there are 10,000 honest, decent, kindly men. If it were not so, no child would live to grow up. Business could not go on from day to day. Decency is not news. It is buried in the obituaries, but it is a force stronger than crime. I believe in the patient gallantry of nurses, in the tedious sacrifices of teachers. I believe in the unseen and unending fight against desperate odds that goes on quietly in almost every home in the land. I believe in the honest craft of workmen. Take a look around you. There never were enough bosses to check up on all that work. From Independence Hall to the Grand Coulee Dam, these things were built level and square by craftsmen who were honest in their bones. I believe that almost all politicians are honest. For every bribed alderman, there are hundreds of politicians, low paid or not paid at all, doing their level best, without thanks or glory, to make our system work. If this were not true, we would never have gotten past the 13 colonies. I believe in Roger Young. You and I are free today because of endless, unnamed heroes from Valley Forge to the Yalu River. I believe in, I am proud to belong to, the United States. Despite shortcomings, from lynchings to bad faith in high places, our nation has had the most decent and kindly internal practices and foreign policies to be found anywhere in history. And finally, I believe in my whole race, yellow, white, black, red, brown, in the honesty, courage, intelligence, durability, and goodness of the overwhelming majority of my brothers and sisters everywhere on this planet. I am proud to be a human being. I believe that we have come this far by the skin of our teeth, that we always make it just for the skin of our teeth, but that we will always make it, survive, endure. I believe that this hairless embryo with the aching, oversized brain case and the opposable thumb, this animal barely up from the apes, will endure longer than his home planet, will spread out to the other planets, to the stars and beyond, carrying with him his honesty, his insatiable curiosity, his unlimited courage, and his noble, essential decency. This I believe with all my heart.
That was Robert A. Heinlein of Colorado Springs, Colorado, a writer and an engineer with an outlook on the future.
This one came from the original series back in the 1950s. And so that's why some of the terms are a little bit weird. Like instead of science fiction, they called it scientific fiction. But some of the ideas might seem a little antiquated. But the basic idea of what he's saying comes out in this first paragraph. And he starts off with kind of a contrarian kind of an idea right here. Let's make that one more purplish. I'm not going to talk about religious beliefs, but about matters so obvious that it has gone out of style to mention them. So he's starting off kind of breaking one of the little rules that the people who asked the writers to come up with had, which was to not do anything negative. But he's doing it to introduce his positive idea. He doesn't dwell on the negative. He has one quick negative that I'm not going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, and then he gets into his I believe statement. And his kind of goes on for 2 sentences here. I believe in my neighbors. I know their faults, and I know that their virtues far outweigh their faults. Okay, so he's believing in people here. When you get right down to the end of his essay, you see he kind of believes a bigger belief down here. He's going to be building to it through his whole essay. And that's his structure for this essay. That's his whole idea there. And so he starts off small. I believe in my neighbors. And then he takes that belief in his neighbors, and he doesn't just say, "Hey, I believe in my neighbors. They're good people. They're wonderful. Blah 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 blah." No, he gives specific examples. Father Michael. Well, let me get these examples here. Let's see. You got the example of Father Michael. You've got the example of his neighbor Doc. So we're not just talking here about neighbors that you have to imagine. He tells you two of his neighbors. And remember, he's starting off up here talking about their virtues outweighing their faults. And so he talks about their virtues, the goodness and charity and loving kindness, how the doc will get out of bed after a hard day to help his stray cat without even thinking about a fee. So that's where he starts. But then in this next paragraph, he builds up a little bit. Okay, so he starts with just his neighbors, and then he goes to his townspeople. And again, look at this whole thing. It's not just saying that he believes in them in some vague, abstract way. He gives concrete examples. Examples that might not hold up today. I mean, today we don't hitchhike, hopefully. Don't hitchhike. Trust me, bad idea. But in the 50s, it was a big thing. Even before that. Maybe we're not quite as quick to be charitable with people today. But we are still charitable with people. I mean, I don't know about you, but riding around in Phoenix City and Columbus, on a lot of corners, I see people holding up signs that they need help. And I see a lot of people rolling down their window and helping them out. So, believing not just in your neighbors, but then he builds it out to people in his hometown. Okay? So there he's taking it up a step again. I believe in my neighbors, I believe in my townspeople, and then he takes it up another step. If I can make my computer work for me here. I believe in my fellow citizens. All right. So now again, he's taking it up a step. Not just his neighbors, not just the townspeople, but his fellow citizens. Okay, and then a little bit of a contrary maybe, okay? Talking about the headlines splashed with crime. And again, he's got that one tiny little negative in there, which again, I guess I'll purple out just to make it stand out. Okay. And then again, like he had the but before, here he's got yet. Yet is another way of changing some directions. Yet for every criminal, there are 10,000 decent, kindly men and women. If it were not so, no child will live to grow up. Business could not go on from day to day. Decency is not news. It is buried in the obituaries, but it is a force stronger than crime. So here he's getting back to the positives about his neighbors, about his fellow citizens in this case, building out. And then again, he doesn't just say that decency is so common. Then he gives examples. The patient gallantry of nurses, the tedious sacrifice of teachers, okay? The unseen and unending fight against desperate odds that go on and quietly in almost every home in the land. The honest craft of workmen. All of these things are examples of decency. Decent people doing decent things. And then when he gets to the honest craft of workmen, he again gives some examples right here. He's big on giving examples, and that's helpful. He breaks down the workmen. Take a look around you. There are never enough bosses to check up on all that work. From Independence Hall to the Grand Coulee Dam, these things were built level and square by craftsmen who were honest in their bones. So he's talking about his fellow citizens here. Most people work for a living, and he's saying that these people, the teachers, the nurses, the workers, are honest people who do hard work. And even though they have these unending fights against desperate odds, they keep fighting. And then this is maybe harder to believe today. I don't know. But believing that almost all politicians are honest. And he's honest enough there to say almost all, because 100% of everybody's not anything. Okay, you want to watch out for total absolutes. Always, never. Those are hard words to make work in an essay. And if you're going to, you've got to be really careful about it. Okay, but he says, for every bribed alderman, there are hundreds of politicians, low paid or not paid at all, doing their level best without thanks or glory to make our system work. If this is not true, he never would have gotten past the 13 colonies. So again, he's building it up. And then he starts this next one, I believe in Roger Young, which kind of seems like going backwards, because here he's gone from neighbors to townspeople to citizens and then to a single person. But Roger Young was a World War II hero. He won a Medal of Honor. I would suggest, doing a quick Google search on him. They even made a song about him. He was pretty famous. And it's sad that he's kind of forgotten today. But he's using Roger Young as a symbol for the people in our armed forces who go out there and protect us, who go out there and keep our country safe. Okay? And then he brings it up again. He believes in the United States. Okay? And he's not naive enough, and he doesn't think the readers are naive enough to know that the United States is perfect. Okay? There have been bad things that have happened. There are still bad things that happen. But he's saying that we have tried, we're making strides. We're trying to go in the right direction. As a country, we have our hearts in the right place, even if we're not always aware of how we're falling short. And then finally, and he even says that, finally, I believe in my whole race. And then he talks about all the different colors. Okay, yellow, white, black, red, brown. In the honesty, courage, intelligence, durability, and when you hear him read it, you hear him hit this word, and goodness of the overwhelming majority of my brothers and sisters everywhere on this planet. Okay, so here he has come a long way. He started up here believing in his neighbors, and then down here he's getting to the belief in his whole race. So he's building the whole time here. Then proud to be a human being. And again, sometimes we're always getting the skin of our teeth. That's a old-fashioned saying. I don't know if you guys know it. It means by the absolute slimmest of margins. Just barely making it. Okay? So hopefully that's what we're going to keep doing. And that's what he believes we're going to keep doing. And then he takes all those ideas, and remember, he's a science fiction writer, so some of the ways he's putting this are a little bit science fiction-y, but again, comes out here that I believe that this hairless embryo with the aching, oversized brain case and the opposable thumb, this animal barely up from the apes, will endure longer than his home planet, will spread out to the other planets, to the stars beyond, carrying with him. And then again, pay attention to these dots. This is where he's talking about things right here. Okay, and I'm going to put this in a different color just because I want to emphasize it. Okay. Honesty, insatiable curiosity, unlimited courage, and noble essential decency. And if you go back and look in his essay, he's talked about honesty, curiosity, courage, decency. And he ends it with this, I believe, with all my heart. And so he gets out of the essay with that. So he's put together a different structure than Anthony Fauci did. In the structure for this essay, he starts off small, and then with each example, he builds that belief out a little bit, up a little bit, widens it a little bit, till he goes from belief in his neighbors to belief in the entire human race, and that the human race as a whole has honesty, curiosity, courage, and decency, which I think is a pretty cool thing to believe, personally. So, what are you going to do now? You just saw me take these two essays and look at them, reading them like a writer. I didn't just look at what they were saying, I looked at how they said it. I looked at how they put things together. I looked at what examples they used, how they talked about their belief. I have an essay that I wrote for this, and an essay that one of my former students wrote for this that I'm going to want you to read. After you read two essays from the website This I Believe. How are you going to find those? Well, go up here to This I Believe, and you'll see people talking about time to walk the dog belief. There's no such thing as too much barbecue. Finding out what's under second base. These are beliefs that people are having, okay? And I hate advertising. Sorry about all the ads that keep popping up on this thing here. If I could make them all go away, I would make them all go away. But up here, you can explore. You can look at featured essays, the 1950s essays. You can look by theme. You know, let's see what's on special features, because I'm not entirely sure. See if my internet will let me work there. Special features, come on. It's working at it. Sorry, slow internet right now. Again, different categories that you might find interesting. You know, these are things that you might want to take a look at. Because I'll tell you, one thing that I'm pretty much going to guarantee that I'll be seeing is a lot of people who are going to go straight to over here, and I'm going to get most of the people writing blog entries about one of these, I think. Prove me wrong. Please, prove me wrong that these aren't the only 3 essays you're going to look at to pick out from your 2. Okay, there's a lot more going on out there that you can do than just that. Okay, I'm going to let you go now. I've taken these 2 apart, reading them like a writer. And your mission is to find 2 essays out of this, I believe. And for each one of those, you're going to write a blog entry. Yes, back to writing blog entries. I know how much you love them. Don't try to kid me. I want to see you thinking about these essays like a writer. And when you write your blog entries, don't just give me a summary, and don't just give your classmates a summary of the essay. The summary is nice. You know, we need to know basically what's going on in the paper, but you don't need to go into super amounts of detail on your summary unless it's showing how what you're talking about shows you something as a writer, something you want to do, something you don't want to do. Knowing what you don't want to do is just as important a lot of the times as knowing what you do want to do. So keep that in mind and have a good day.